When a pregnant homeless woman saw a small 5-year-old boy crying alone on a busy street, everyone else walked past. She did not. Though tired and hungry, she used her last money to buy him food, covered him with her only blanket, and stayed with him through the cold night. That quiet act of kindness, one heart choosing love over fear, started a chain of miracles neither could imagine. Their lives, once full of pain, were changed by love, safety, and a fresh start. This story will touch your heart, heal it, and show you how one simple act of kindness can change everything. Listen well. The late afternoon sun was slowly setting, leaving the city covered in a dusty orange color. Cars honked and rushed past as if they were going somewhere very important. Sarah sat on a piece of cardboard near the corner of a busy street. Her back rested against the rough wall of a closed shop. Her belly was round and large beneath her old dress, reminding her of the small life growing inside her. Every small kick made her both happy and worried. She whispered a promise to the baby she had not yet met. "We will be okay somehow." A paper cup sat beside her, holding only a few coins that made soft sounds whenever someone's shoe hit it. Most people did not even look at her. She had stopped hoping for kindness. Hunger pressed into her ribs, and her lips felt dry from the warm wind. She moved uncomfortably, trying to stretch her painful legs. Life on the streets was not new anymore. She had been out here for many months, ever since her parents closed their door on her and the baby she carried. They did not care that the father of her child left as soon as he heard the word pregnant. They did not listen when she asked for one more chance. Now the city sidewalk was her only home. Some nights she found a corner in an empty building to hide from the cold. Other nights she stayed awake, afraid someone might try to hurt her while she slept. As the light grew dim, Sarah pulled her thin jacket closer around her shoulders. The evening air smelled of fried food and car smoke. She rubbed her stomach and thought about how many hours it had been since she last ate. A man in a clean white shirt walked by without looking. A group of teenagers laughed loudly, their shoes flashing as they moved. No one stopped. No one noticed. Then she heard it, a soft, shaky cry. At first, Sarah thought it was her mind playing tricks. She turned her head, listening carefully. The sound came again, high and scared. A child crying, hidden in the noise of the street. Her heart jumped. She turned toward the sound and saw a small figure a few steps away near a lamppost. It was a boy, maybe 5 years old, dressed in a t-shirt and shorts that were clean but now dirty with dust. His dark hair stuck up in different directions. He stood alone, shoulders shaking as he rubbed his eyes with small fists. Sarah pushed herself up, feeling the weight of her pregnancy but ignoring it. "Hey there," she said softly, taking a careful step forward. "Hi, sweetheart." The boy stopped and looked up. His wide brown eyes were wet with tears. He made a small sound but did not speak. "It's okay," Sarah said, bending down so she was closer to his height. Her knees hurt against the hard ground. "I'm Sarah. What is your name?" The boy opened his mouth but no sound came out. He sniffed and looked around, as if searching for someone he could not find. Sarah's heart hurt. "Are you lost? Where is your mom or dad?" She looked at the street, hoping to see a worried parent running toward them, but people kept walking by, some giving quick, uncomfortable looks before looking away. The boy shook his head, tears running down his cheeks. Sarah offered a small smile, meant to be calming. "It's okay, honey. You're safe with me." She put out her hand slowly, letting him see she meant no harm. "Come sit with me for a bit. We will figure this out." He waited, then nodded very slightly. Sarah guided him back to the spot where she had been sitting. They sat down on the sidewalk together. She could feel how tense he was, his small shoulders stiff as stone. Her own stomach made a loud noise, a cruel reminder of how little she had eaten. She thought of the single crumpled bill in her pocket, the last of the money she had collected that day. It was supposed to buy her dinner, maybe a small piece of bread, but the boy's thin arms and frightened eyes left no room for waiting. "Wait here, okay?
"Don't move," she said. "I'm just crossing the street to get you something to eat." The boy looked at her, unsure, but he stayed where he was. Sarah hurried to a small food stand nearby. The smell of warm rice and beans drifted through the air. She gave the precious bill and took a small plate wrapped in paper. Her own hunger screamed at the sight of the food, but she carried it back carefully. "Here you go," she said, placing the plate in his lap. He looked at her, surprised, then at the food. The moment she nodded, he began to eat. He put the rice into his mouth so quickly that she had to remind him, "Slow down a little or you will choke." The boy barely stopped. Watching him stirred something deep in Sarah's chest, a feeling beyond hunger, a mix of sadness and strong protection. "You must have been hungry for a long time," she said softly. When he finally finished, he sat back and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Some of the tension left his small body. Sarah tried again, her voice gentle. "Can you tell me your name now?" The boy waited, then whispered, "Ethan." "Ethan?" she repeated with a small smile. "That's a strong name. Hi, Ethan."
He gave a shy nod. "Do you remember where your mom or dad are?" she asked. Ethan's eyes filled again, and he shook his head quickly. "It's okay," Sarah said, reaching out to lightly touch his shoulder. "Do not worry, we'll find them." The sky was turning purple at the edges, the first stars trying to shine through the city lights. Sarah knew she had to think fast. She could not leave a 5-year-old alone, but she also could not keep him with her forever. The police, she thought. Maybe they would help. She stood and offered her hand. "Come on, Ethan. Let us go find someone who can help us." He put his small hand into hers, the warmth surprising against her cold fingers. They started toward the nearest police station, a quiet pair moving through the noisy city. Sarah ignored her own hunger and the dull pain in her feet. Right now, the only thing that mattered was making sure Ethan found his way back to his family. The walk to the police station felt longer than it was. Sarah's shoes, already thin from months of wear, scraped against the rough sidewalk. The streetlights turned on one by one, glowing like small moons in the growing dark. Ethan held her hand so tightly that she could feel every small shake in his body. "Almost there," she whispered, though she was not sure if it made him feel better or herself. The station's neon sign came into view, making a soft buzzing sound against the dark sky. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and damp paper. A tired-looking officer sat behind a counter, leaning back in his chair. He barely lifted his head when they stepped in. "Excuse me," Sarah said, trying to sound calm and respectful. "This boy is lost. I found him on Main Street. I think he has been missing for a while." The officer finally looked up. His eyes moved from Sarah's large belly to her old jacket and worn shoes, then to Ethan, whose cheeks were still marked with dried tears. The look he gave them made Sarah's stomach knot. "Uh-huh," he said flatly. "Where did you pick him up?" "I just told you, on Main Street," she repeated. "He doesn't know where his parents are. Please, can you help us?" The officer leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Lady, we get people like you every week. Homeless women show up with kids, say they're lost, and hope we'll give them a hot meal and a place to sleep. I'm not buying it." Sarah blinked, surprised. "I'm not lying. I don't even know him. I just found him alone and crying." "Sure you did," he said with a dry laugh. "Look, social services is closed for the night." Sarah's heart pounded. "I'm not playing games. Please, his family must be looking for him." The officer stood, his voice sharp now. "I said, take him somewhere else. We're busy." A door slammed in the back, the sound final as a judge's decision. Sarah felt the heat of anger burn her cheeks. She wanted to yell, to demand he care, but Ethan's small hand shook in hers. She swallowed her anger. A fight wouldn't help. "Come on, sweetheart," she said softly. "We'll figure something out." They stepped back into the night. The city's noise seemed louder, the air colder. Sarah pulled her jacket tighter and looked at Ethan. His face was pale and tired, his eyes shiny with tears he had not yet cried. "I'm sorry," she said. "They should have helped." He looked up at her, but said nothing. Sarah bent down so they were eye to eye. "You can stay with me tonight. It's not much, but it's safe. Tomorrow we'll try again." Ethan nodded once, as if trusting her completely. The streets grew quieter as they walked. Shop windows were dark, and the smell of fresh bread from a bakery slowly disappeared into the heavy night. Sarah led Ethan to the edge of the city, where an empty building stood like a giant skeleton. Concrete walls rose without windows, and rusty metal rods stuck out from the ground like old spears. "This is where I stay," she said softly. "It's not pretty, but it keeps the rain out." Inside, moonlight came through gaps in the roof. Sarah spread her thin blanket on the dry corner she usually used. She set her small bag down and dug out the last piece of bread she had been saving. It was hard around the edges, but Ethan's eyes became bright. "Here," she said, handing it to him. "Eat it slowly." He broke the bread carefully, as though afraid it might disappear, and ate in quiet bites. Sarah watched, her own stomach tightening with hunger, but she felt oddly full just seeing him eat. When he was done, she brushed crumbs from his small hands. "Do you want to tell me anything about your home? Anything at all?" Ethan turned his head, thinking. "Big house," he said finally, his voice soft. "Lots of trees." "Okay," Sarah said, holding on to the small clue. "That's good. Anything else? A street name? Your mom or dad's name?" He frowned, his small eyebrows pulling together. "Daddy Michael," he whispered. Sarah smiled gently. "That's great. Daddy Michael. We'll remember that." Ethan yawned and rubbed his eyes. The long day had worn him down. Sarah helped him lie down on the blanket, then sat beside him. The baby inside her kicked, a soft reminder of the life she carried. She rested her hand on her belly and whispered to both children, one unborn, one unexpected. "We're safe tonight, I promise." Ethan's breathing slowed to the steady rhythm of sleep. Sarah stayed awake, listening to the distant sounds of traffic and the occasional bark of a stray dog. The night was cool, but not cruel. For the first time in a long while, she did not feel completely alone. Morning sunlight crept across the cracked walls of the empty building, warming Sarah's face. She opened her eyes slowly, careful not to wake Ethan, who was still sleeping beside her beneath the thin blanket. For a moment, she simply listened to his quiet breathing, a sound soft enough to calm the restless pain in her heart. Her own stomach made a loud noise in protest. They hadn't eaten since last night's dry piece of bread, and she knew the boy would be hungry the moment he woke. Sarah checked the small paper cup she used to collect spare change when she asked for help on the streets. Inside lay a handful of coins, small acts of kindness from strangers from the day before. It was not much, but it was something.
She put the coins into her pocket and gently shook Ethan's shoulder. "Good morning, buddy," she whispered. "Let us find some breakfast." Ethan rubbed his eyes, blinking up at the pale morning light. "Food?" he asked in a sleepy voice. Sarah smiled. "Yes, food." They left the shelter of the cold concrete walls and walked toward the busy main street. The city was already awake, sellers shouting, buses honking, the air full of the smell of fried dough and roasted peanuts. Sarah's stomach made a loud noise again as she walked up to a small food stall where a woman flipped hot bean cakes on a hot pan. With a shy smile, Sarah held out her coins. "How much can we get for this?" The woman counted the coins and gave her 2 warm bean cakes wrapped in paper. Sarah thanked her and handed one to Ethan. The boy took a careful bite, then smiled, his eyes lighting up. Seeing his face brighten filled Sarah with a quiet pride. At least she could give him this small comfort. After they ate, Sarah led Ethan back to the busy corner where she had found him yesterday. She chose the same spot near the lamppost, hoping that someone searching for a lost child might think to look here. They sat on the sidewalk together as the morning traffic got thicker. Hours passed. Sarah watched the crowds, looking at every face for a sign of worry or knowing. She imagined a worried mother pushing through the crowd or a father calling his son's name. But the faces that passed were busy, people rushing to work, to school, to errands. No one slowed. To keep Ethan's spirits up, Sarah told him little stories. How clouds shaped like dragons raced across the sky, how the pigeons were secret messengers, how every car carried its own adventure. He giggled when she made funny voices, his laughter like a small song in the city's noise. It was late afternoon when a shiny black SUV slowed near them. The door opened and a man in a driver's uniform jumped out. He looked worried, looking at the street, until his eyes landed on Ethan. "Ethan!" the man shouted. Ethan's head turned quickly. "That is my name," he whispered, hope lighting his face. The driver hurried over. "Where have you been, young master? We have been searching everywhere." Sarah stepped between them. "Do you know this boy?" "Yes, ma'am," the driver said quickly. "He's my boss's son. He went missing yesterday. We have been searching all night." Sarah studied his worried face. She wanted to believe him, but caution held her back. "If you are telling the truth, I'm coming with you," she said firmly. "Of course," he said, relief flooding his voice. "Please, his father will be so thankful." Sarah held Ethan's hand as they climbed into the SUV. The soft seats felt strange after weeks of cold concrete. Ethan leaned against her, already more relaxed. Sarah kept her eyes on the window as the city's scenery changed. Stores and crowded sidewalks gave way to wide streets lined with tall trees and gates. Finally, they turned into a grand driveway that curved toward a mansion with glowing windows. Sarah's breath caught. The house looked like something from a movie. The driver called ahead, and by the time they reached the entrance, a tall man in his early 30s stood waiting on the steps. He was handsome, with sharp features and warm brown eyes that searched for his child. The moment the car stopped, Ethan jumped out. "Daddy!" he cried, running straight into his arms. The man knelt, hugging his son tight. "Ethan, thank God," he whispered. Sarah stayed by the car, suddenly shy. The driver explained quickly how Sarah had found the boy and cared for him. The tall man stepped forward and offered a grateful smile. "I'm Michael," he said. "I cannot thank you enough for bringing my son back to me." Sarah nodded, her heart still racing. "I'm just glad he's safe," she said softly. The mansion smelled faintly of fresh bread and polished wood. Sarah followed Michael and Ethan through a wide hallway lined with tall windows. Sunlight poured across the marble floor, so bright she had to blink. Her worn shoes made a soft sound with every step, and she wished for a moment that she looked different, cleaner, less like someone who had slept on cold concrete the night before. "Come in," Michael said with a gentle smile. "You must be hungry." Sarah stopped at the entrance of a grand dining room. A table as long as a small car shone under a chandelier of crystal and gold. Plates and glasses sparkled. The smell of roasted chicken and herbs made her stomach twist with both hunger and nerves. "I don't want to intrude," she said softly. "You saved my son," Michael replied. "You could never be an intruder here." He pulled out a chair for her, and his kindness left her with nothing to say. Ethan climbed into the seat beside her, swinging his small legs under the chair. "Daddy, can Sarah sit next to me forever?" he asked, eyes bright. "Let's start with lunch today," he said. "Then we'll see." A housekeeper brought hot bowls of soup and warm bread. Sarah said a quiet thank you. It had been weeks since she had eaten food that wasn't from a corner shop. She tried to eat slowly, but each bite felt like the best she had ever tasted. Michael watched her with quiet interest.
You don't have to answer, but I'd like to know how you ended up on that street with my son. You seem too young and too strong to be out there alone." Sarah lowered her spoon and held her hands in her lap. For a moment, she thought about hiding the truth, but something in Michael's calm look made her feel safe. "My parents asked me to leave when they found out I was pregnant." Her voice shook, but she continued. "My boyfriend didn't want the baby. He said it was all my problem. I tried staying with friends, but nobody had room for long. I've been on the streets for a few months now. Some days I get small jobs, washing windows, sweeping shops, but it's never enough for rent." Michael's jaw tightened with quiet anger, though not at her. "And the baby's father? He just walked away?" She nodded. "I haven't heard from him since." Silence filled the room except for the soft sound of Ethan's spoon. Sarah's cheeks burned. She hated pity as much as hunger, but Michael didn't look at her with pity. His eyes held respect, as if he saw not just a homeless girl, but a fighter. "You've kept going through all that," he said at last. "That takes courage." Sarah gave a small shrug. "I just didn't know what else to do. I have to keep the baby safe. That's all that matters." Michael leaned back, studying her. "Where are you staying now?" "An old building near the bus station," she said. "The roof leaks, but it's better than sleeping outside." Michael's jaw tightened again. "That's no place for you or the baby." Sarah stared at her bowl, unsure how to reply. She had learned long ago not to expect help. After a long pause, Michael spoke again, his voice firm but gentle. "I have a guest house on the property. It's private, with its own little kitchen and bath. My housekeeper has been looking for extra help. If you would like, you could stay there and work here, cleaning, organizing, nothing heavy. You would have your own space, your own key, and you would be paid, of course."
Sarah's breath caught. You do not even know me." "I know you cared for a child who was not yours," Michael said. "I know you walked into a police station when everyone else kept walking by. That tells me enough." Tears came to Sarah's eyes before she could stop them. No one had offered her kindness in months, not without expecting something in return. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Completely sure," Michael replied. "You would be helping me too. Ethan clearly adores you." Ethan grinned, soup spoon in hand. "Please say yes, Sarah." Sarah let out a shaky laugh. "Okay," she whispered. "Yes, thank you. Thank you so much." Relief washed through her like warm sunlight. For the first time in what felt like forever, tomorrow did not look empty. Later that afternoon, Michael gave her a tour of the property. The guest house stood a short walk from the main mansion, surrounded by a small garden of bright flowers. Inside, the rooms were simple but clean, a cozy living area, a neat bedroom, and a kitchen with shiny counters. Compared to the damp corner of the empty building, it felt like a palace. "This will be yours," Michael said, handing her a small silver key. "Take your time to settle in. If you need clothes or anything for the baby, we can arrange that." Sarah ran her hand along the smooth wall, half afraid she was dreaming. "I do not know how to thank you," she said. "You already have," Michael replied softly. "You kept Ethan safe. That is more than I can ever repay." Ethan ran into the guest house and jumped onto the couch, giggling. "Can I visit Sarah every day?" "Every day?" Michael said, smiling. Over the next week, Sarah learned her new routine. She woke early to tidy the large house, dusting the grand staircase and wiping the tall windows that caught the morning light. The work was steady but never harsh. She had her own quiet mornings in the guest house, making tea and feeling the baby kick while birds sang outside. Ethan followed her everywhere he could. He helped carry towels and tried to sweep, though he mostly made small piles of dust in the wrong places. "You are my best friend," he told her one afternoon, beaming up at her with a big smile. The words filled Sarah with unexpected warmth. She had not realized how lonely she had been until this small boy decided she mattered. Sometimes, when Ethan ran off to play, Michael would pause to chat with her. He asked about her favorite books, the food she missed from home, and what she hoped for the baby's future. He listened carefully, never rushing her answers. Sarah found herself smiling more than she had in months. One evening, as she left the main house, Michael called after her. "Sarah," he said, holding out a paper bag, "fresh bread, still warm." She accepted it with a grateful nod. "Thank you." "You deserve it," he said simply. Walking back to the guest house with the warm loaf in her hands, Sarah felt something new, a small, quiet hope. The world had not given up on her after all. Maybe, just maybe, she could build a safe life for her child, and for the first time since the day she had been turned away from her family's door, she believed that tomorrow could be better than today. The next Saturday morning began like most of Sarah's new days. Warm sunlight came through the guest house curtains, and birds sang in the garden. She stretched, feeling the quiet kick of her baby and the soft peace of a place that finally felt safe. After breakfast, she walked to the main house to begin her chores, polishing the grand stair rails and wiping the tall windows that caught the morning light. Ethan met her halfway down the hall, his face bright. "Sarah, Daddy says we are having a special visitor today." "Oh," Sarah knelt to tie his untied shoelace. "Who is coming?" He lowered his voice like it was a secret. "Victoria, Daddy's almost wife." Sarah smiled, though she felt a small pull of curiosity. Michael had mentioned a fiancé once in a quiet way, but never with excitement. "That sounds nice," she said. "Will you help me keep the house tidy for her?" Ethan grinned. "Yes." By early afternoon, the sound of tires on gravel announced the visitor. Through the tall front window, Sarah saw a sleek silver sports car stop. A woman stepped out, tall and elegant, wearing a cream-colored dress that looked as if it had been made only for her. Her black hair shone in the sunlight, and large sunglasses hid most of her face. Everything about her seemed perfect and expensive. Michael opened the door, smiling politely. "Victoria," he said. She removed her glasses and kissed his cheek. "Michael," she replied, in a voice smooth as silk but cool as marble. Her eyes shifted quickly to Sarah, who stood near the staircase, holding a dustcloth. "And who is this?" Victoria asked, her tone sharp enough to cut. Michael's smile softened. "This is Sarah. She helped Ethan when he was lost. She works here now." Victoria's lips formed a thin line. "Oh, how kind." Sarah offered a small nod. "Nice to meet you." Victoria's eyes looked over Sarah's simple dress and worn shoes. "Yes, nice," she said, though her voice carried no warmth. That evening, Sarah stayed out of the way while Michael and Victoria ate dinner in the dining room. She cleaned the kitchen quietly, but Victoria's laughter, light yet cold, floated through the hall. Every few minutes, Sarah caught Victoria's glance in her direction, a quick look of sharp eyes that made her stomach tighten. After dinner, Sarah began wiping the counters when Victoria appeared in the doorway. "Sarah, was it?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. The windows in the sitting room look streaked," Victoria said. "Could you handle that before you leave?" "I just cleaned them this morning," Sarah said gently, "but I can check again." Victoria tilted her head with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Please do. I like things spotless." Sarah simply nodded and gathered her cloths. She had learned that some battles were not worth fighting. Over the next week, Victoria visited often. Each time she found new ways to test Sarah's patience. One morning, Victoria entered the kitchen carrying a cup of hot coffee. Sarah was mopping the floor. "The hall still feels dusty," Victoria said. "I swept it an hour ago," Sarah replied. Victoria smiled, then slowly tipped her cup, spilling dark coffee across the just-mopped tiles. "Now it is dirty," she said softly. "Would you mind cleaning it again?" Sarah's heart beat fast. She wanted to shout, "Why are you doing this?" But she only said, "Of course," and reached for the mop. Ethan, who had been coloring at the table, jumped up. "That is not nice, Victoria." "Hush, dear," Victoria said with a fake sweetness. "Adults are talking." Ethan frowned but looked at Sarah, who gave him a small shake of her head. It was not worth upsetting him further. Later that day, Sarah stepped outside to breathe in the cool air. Michael found her by the rose bushes. "You okay?" he asked. She forced a smile. "Just getting some air." His eyes narrowed. "Has Victoria been giving you trouble?" Sarah waited. "She is particular." Michael sighed. "I'm sorry. She can be demanding."
He looked toward the house, a shadow crossing his face. "I will talk to her." "No," Sarah said quickly. "Please do not. I do not want to cause trouble. I can handle it." Michael studied her for a moment, then nodded. "If you change your mind, tell me." The days passed, and Victoria's small cruelties grew sharper. She left fingerprints on freshly cleaned mirrors and claimed Sarah had not polished them. She accidentally knocked over vases and asked Sarah to scrub the carpets again. Through it all, Sarah kept her voice calm and her smile steady. She reminded herself that she had a warm bed now, and her baby needed her to stay strong. Ethan noticed more than she realized. One evening, as they folded laundry together, Ethan whispered, "I do not like Victoria. She is mean to you." Sarah smoothed his hair. "It's okay, Ethan. Sometimes people act unkind for reasons we do not know, but we stay kind anyway." He nodded, though his little eyebrows stayed down. That night, alone in the guest house, Sarah rubbed her belly and let the baby's small kicks steady her. Victoria's coldness hurt, but it could not erase the thanks she felt for the safe place or the growing bond she shared with Ethan. Whatever storms Victoria tried to stir, Sarah reminded herself she had survived worse, and for the small life inside her, she would stay steady, no matter how sharp Victoria's smile became. The morning air was warm and heavy with the smell of roses. Sarah was polishing the tall windows in the sitting room, while Michael finished a phone call in his office down the hall. Ethan was outside chasing butterflies, his happy shouts floating through the open door. The front door opened with a soft click. Victoria's heels tapped sharply across the marble floor. Sarah kept her eyes on the glass, hoping for a quiet visit, but the sharp rhythm of Victoria's steps stopped behind her. "I do not know why Michael keeps that girl here," Victoria said, her voice low but sharp enough to cut the air. "A homeless maid with a baby on the way. What will people think when they see her in this house?" Sarah froze, her cloth pressed against the window. She was not talking to her. She was on the phone. "I told Michael she does not belong here," Victoria continued, her tone full of dislike. "It's charity, that's all, and one day he will regret it." A floorboard made a sound. Victoria gasped and turned around. Michael stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes dark with anger. "Victoria," he said, his voice cool and even, "we need to talk." Victoria quickly ended the call. "Michael, this is not what it sounds like." "It sounds like you were insulting someone who has shown nothing but kindness and hard work," he replied. Victoria's chin lifted. "I am only being honest. People will judge you for keeping her here. She is not our kind of people." "Our kind of people?" Michael stepped closer, his voice rising. "She protected my son when you were nowhere around. She works harder than anyone I know. Don't you dare talk about her like that." Victoria's eyes flashed. "You don't see it, do you? You're letting some stray girl take over this house. She is beneath us, Michael." Sarah's stomach tightened, but she stayed silent. This was not her fight. Michael's voice hardened. "The only person acting beneath themselves right now is you." Victoria's face turned red with anger. "You cannot speak to me like that." "I just did," he said evenly. For a moment, the room felt frozen. Then Victoria turned on her heel. "Fine. If you want to ruin your reputation for a servant, be my guest." Her heels clicked sharply as she walked out, the door slamming behind her. Sarah turned back to the window, unsure what to say. Michael stepped closer, his face softening. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," he said quietly. "It's okay," Sarah replied, keeping her voice steady. "I'm used to people judging." "You shouldn't have to be," he said. "Not here." Later that afternoon, Michael found her in the garden where she was trimming the rose bushes. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked. "There's nothing to talk about," Sarah said, cutting a thorny branch. "She doesn't like me. That's fine." "It's not fine," he said firmly. "You deserve respect." Sarah looked up at him. His eyes held a warmth that eased the sting of Victoria's words. "Thank you," she said softly. Michael smiled faintly. "You know, you've changed this house more than you realized."
Ethan laughs more. The staff is happier. Even I feel different. Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "I just try to do my job." "It's more than that," he said. "It's who you are." They stood in comfortable silence, the late sun painting the garden gold. For the first time in months, Sarah felt truly seen. Days passed and their conversations grew deeper almost without planning. In the evenings, after Ethan went to bed, Michael would sometimes join Sarah on the guest house porch. They spoke of simple things, books they loved, the smell of rain on hot pavement, memories from childhood. One night, as crickets sang in the dark, Michael asked, "What do you want for the future, for yourself and the baby?" Sarah looked up at the stars. "A safe home," she said, "a place where no one tells me I don't belong. You deserve that, and more." She turned toward him, catching the quiet admiration in his look. Something unspoken passed between them, gentle but strong. Michael also began noticing small details about her, how she hummed when she worked, how she listened with her whole heart when Ethan spoke, how she always found kind words even when others were harsh. Her strength showed not in loudness, but in the way she kept going. One afternoon, he watched from the veranda as she knelt to help Ethan build a small tower of stones. The boy laughed when the tower wobbled, and Sarah laughed with him, her smile bright despite the summer heat. Michael felt a quiet pull, a respect, that grew into something warmer.
Another evening, a soft rain began to fall. Sarah stood under the porch roof, enjoying the cool drops. Michael joined her, holding 2 mugs of hot tea. "You always know when I need this," she said, accepting the mug. He smiled. "Maybe I am learning." They listened to the rain together, the sound like a gentle drum. "You have a calm about you," Michael said, "even with everything you have faced." "I do not always feel calm," Sarah admitted, "but I try for the baby, for Ethan too." He looked at her, his eyes kind. "You have given us both more than you know." Victoria returned to the mansion only once that week, her visits short and cold. She barely looked at Sarah and spoke to Michael in short sentences. The tension was clear, but Sarah focused on her work and the quiet moments with Ethan and Michael. Late one night, after Victoria had left again, Michael knocked softly on the guest house door. Sarah opened it, surprised. "I just wanted to make sure you are okay," he said, "after everything." "I'm fine," she said, smiling. "Really?" He stayed in the doorway. "You make this place feel like a home," he said quietly. "For Ethan, for me." For a moment, neither of them moved. The only sound was the soft hum of the night insects. Then Michael gave a small, almost shy smile. "Good night, Sarah." "Good night, Michael," she replied, her heart unexpectedly light. As the door closed, Sarah rested a hand on her growing belly. She thought of how far she had come, from cold sidewalks to this warm guest house, from being unseen to sharing quiet, meaningful talks under the stars. She knew feelings were forming between them, unspoken but real, and she could not help but wonder where this new beginning might lead. The evening air felt heavy, as if the house itself held its breath. Sarah moved quietly through the wide hallway, a basket of folded laundry balanced on her hip. Outside, a late summer storm made a low sound in the distance. She liked these hours after dinner, when the mansion grew calm. Ethan was already in bed, and Michael had gone to his study to finish some calls. She stopped by the big window at the end of the hall. Lightning flashed across the sky, lighting the roses below like brief fireworks. Sarah smiled faintly. For weeks now, the mansion had begun to feel like a safe world, a world she never believed could belong to someone like her. From deeper inside the house came the soft echo of a voice. At first, she thought it was Michael on the phone, but the sound carried a sharper edge. Victoria. Sarah had not seen Michael's fiancée for a few days, and she was grateful. Each visit from Victoria brought a fresh chill to the air. Still, Michael insisted Victoria had the right to visit.
They were technically still engaged, even if his tone whenever he said the word grew more tired each week. Curious, Sarah followed the voice to the sitting room. The door was almost closed, a small line of golden light spilling into the hallway. She stopped just short of the crack and turned her head. "You promised me it would be done," Victoria hissed. "I gave you more than enough time." A man's voice answered, low and muffled, impossible to recognize. "You don't understand," Victoria snapped, louder this time. "Michael thinks that boy is everything. As long as Ethan is alive, Michael will never love anyone else fully. I will not have my own children pushed aside." Sarah's heart stumbled. "As long as Ethan is alive." Another rumble of thunder covered the next words, but when it faded, Sarah heard clear as a knife, "You failed once. I will not forgive another mistake." She held the laundry basket tighter, her hands suddenly damp. The memory of that night, months ago, finding Ethan alone on the street, shaking and hungry, rushed back like a storm tide. Could Victoria have... The man said something again. Victoria's reply came cold and certain. "Handle it. No witnesses this time." Sarah's breath caught. The laundry basket slid from her arms and landed softly on the carpet. She pressed herself against the wall, praying the sound hadn't carried. The door creaked. Victoria stepped out, phone in hand, her eyes narrow and calculating. For one terrifying second, she thought those eyes would find her in the shadows, but Victoria turned toward the front door and walked away, her heels clicking like distant gunfire. The front door opened, then shut with a soft sound. Sarah's knees felt weak. She forced herself to breathe, to stay quiet until the sound of Victoria's car faded down the driveway. Only then did she bend to pick up the laundry basket, though her hands shook so badly that a towel slipped to the floor. In her guest house later, Sarah walked the small living room, heart racing. She couldn't have meant what it sounded like, she told herself. Maybe she had misunderstood. Maybe Victoria's words were only angry nonsense. But deep down, she knew the truth. The night she found Ethan was not random. Someone had wanted him gone, and Victoria had just confirmed it. Sarah wrapped her arms around her stomach. The baby kicked softly, as if sensing her fear. She thought of Ethan's bright eyes, the way he laughed when she read him stories. The idea of anyone harming him made her feel cold all over. She knew she should tell Michael, but would he believe her? Victoria was his fiancée, a woman he had once loved enough to promise marriage. And Sarah was, well, a homeless girl with a growing belly and no proof. Still, silence was not an option. Ethan's life could depend on her courage. Michael was still awake when Sarah knocked on the study door. He looked up from a stack of papers, surprised. "Sarah, is something wrong?" She stepped inside, her voice shaking. "I need to tell you something. It's about Victoria." Michael set down his pen immediately. "Go on." She took a deep breath and told him everything. The phone call, the words she had heard, the icy certainty in Victoria's voice. She repeated the phrases as clearly as she could, her heart pounding with every word.
When she finished, silence stretched between them. The only sound was the soft hum of the desk lamp. Michael's face hardened. "You are sure of what you heard?" "I swear," Sarah said. "I would not lie about this." He leaned back, eyes dark with thought. "I believe you," he said at last, his voice low but firm. "It explains so much. The night Ethan disappeared, the way she has been acting. I have had doubts, but this..." He shook his head. "This is different." Relief and fear washed over Sarah at once. "What will you do?" "I will protect my son," Michael said simply. First thing the next morning, Michael acted with quiet urgency. He called a trusted private investigator named Mr. Johnson and explained the situation in a low, steady voice. Johnson agreed to review the mansion's security footage and any other evidence. Ethan sensed the tension, staying close to Sarah's side. She spent the day keeping him busy, reading books, building block castles, while Michael met with Johnson in his study. By late afternoon, Johnson returned with a small drive of files and a grave expression. Michael invited Sarah to join them. Together, they watched the security footage from the night Ethan went missing. The images were grainy, but clear enough. They showed Ethan playing in the garden as dusk fell, a small ball rolling toward the side gate. Moments later, Victoria appeared, speaking quickly to a man in a dark jacket. The man opened the gate. Ethan, following his ball, walked outside. Victoria looked back once, her face cold, before going away into the house. Sarah felt her stomach drop. There was no mistaking it. Michael's jaw tightened. "That is enough," he said, voice sharp. Johnson nodded. "I can forward this directly to the police. It is more than enough to open an investigation." "Do it," Michael said. The police arrived just after sunset. Ethan slept upstairs, unaware of the storm happening below. Sarah stood near the fireplace, her hands tight together, as two officers listened to Michael and watched the footage. Their eyes darkened. One officer spoke softly into a radio, and a call went out for Victoria's arrest. It was nearly midnight when Victoria returned, walking into the mansion with her usual dramatic style. She stopped short at the sight of the uniformed officers. "What is going on?" she demanded. "Victoria," Michael said, stepping forward. "We know everything." Victoria's eyes flicked to the officers, then to Sarah. "What are you talking about?" "The night Ethan went missing," Michael said evenly. "The cameras recorded you. You opened the gate. You let someone lure him away." Her face went pale, then flushed red. "That is ridiculous. You cannot prove." "We have the video," the officer interrupted. For a heartbeat, Victoria seemed to fall apart. Then her voice turned desperate. "Michael, please, I only did it because I love you. I needed you to see that." "Stop," Michael cut in, his voice like steel. "Love does not try to hurt a child." Victoria's eyes filled with angry tears. "I just wanted us to have a real family. I wanted our children to matter." "You were willing to harm my son," Michael said, his face hard with disgust. "That is not love. That is selfishness." The officer stepped forward. "Victoria Hayes, you are under arrest for conspiracy and child endangerment," one said, reading her rights. Victoria's look turned to Michael one last time. "You will regret this," she hissed, then turned to Sarah with a glare full of venom. "And you ruined everything." Sarah held her ground, though her heart beat fast. The officers led Victoria out into the night. The door closed behind them with a heavy finality. The mansion felt strangely quiet after they left. Michael stood without moving for a moment, then let out a long breath. "It's over," he said softly. Sarah stepped closer. "I'm so sorry," she said. "Don't be." He turned toward her, eyes warm despite the tension in his shoulders. "You saved Ethan again." Sarah shook her head. "I just did what anyone would." "No," Michael said gently. "Not everyone would have listened. Not everyone would have spoken up." He paused. "You have more courage than anyone I know." His words warmed her more than she expected. They moved together to check on Ethan, who slept peacefully, unaware of the danger that had passed. In the days that followed, the mansion felt lighter, as if a heavy curtain had been pulled away. The police kept Michael updated, but Victoria remained in custody. Neighbors whispered, but Michael ignored them. With the tension gone, small, quiet moments began to bloom between Michael and Sarah. They often sat on the guest house porch after Ethan went to bed, talking while crickets sang. Michael shared stories from his childhood, how he built his first business selling lemonade at age 10, how he once got lost in the woods and was found by his worried father. Sarah told him about the books she loved as a girl and the small joys she still found even on the streets.
One evening, as a soft breeze stirred the garden, Michael said, "You have changed this house. Ethan laughs more. I laugh more. That's because of you."
Sarah smiled shyly. "I just try to help. It is more than that," he said. "You bring kindness into every room." They sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with something unspoken. Sarah felt her heartbeat faster. She was not sure when admiration had turned into something deeper, but she could feel it now, a quiet pull, steady and warm. Michael looked out at the moonlit roses. "I do not know what the future holds," he said slowly, "but I know I want you and your baby to be part of it." The words settled between them like a promise. Sarah felt a calm she had not known in years. For the first time since she had been cast out of her parents' house, she believed that a safe, loving life was truly possible. One evening, the three of them ate dinner on the terrace. Lanterns hung from the beams, and the soft light touched the roses below. A light breeze carried the scent of herbs from the kitchen garden. Ethan chatted about schoolwork and the tower of blocks he planned to build after dessert. He also asked 100 questions about how the moon followed cars at night, and Michael did his best to explain it, while Sarah listened with an amused face. After Ethan went to bed, Michael stayed out on the terrace with Sarah. Stars dotted the sky. The night looked wide and gentle, like it was giving them room to speak. "Sarah," Michael said, folding his hands, "I have said thank you so many times that it doesn't sound big enough anymore. You kept my son safe. You kept my home steady. You kept me from forgetting what matters." She shook her head with a small smile. "You gave me a home when I had none," she said softly, "and you gave my baby a chance. I did not think that was possible for someone like me." "For someone like you," he repeated, almost surprised. "The strongest person I know, the kindest. Sarah, your worth was never in question." Her cheeks warmed. She looked down at her hands. "Thank you." He took a breath. "I do not want this to be just a chapter that ends. I want it to be the rest of our story." She lifted her eyes. He was watching her with a hope that felt careful and sure at the same time. "Sarah," he said, voice steady, "will you marry me?" There was no ring in his hand yet. There were no roses thrown on the table or a band to play music. It was just his honest voice in the quiet air that made it perfect. Her first answer was not a word. It was a simple nod and a soft sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Then she said it clearly, so there could be no doubt. "Yes." He let out a breath and stood, moving to her side. He did not kiss her mouth yet. He pressed a kiss to her forehead first, and then he held her. The world felt very still. Somewhere beyond the garden, a night bird sang. Sarah thought of the many nights she had spent alone and scared, and now here she was, held, safe, wanted. Later that week, he took her to a quiet shop where a jeweler showed her simple rings and fancy ones. Sarah's eyes kept returning to one with a thin gold band and a small diamond that caught the light like a bright drop of water. "It's beautiful," she whispered, almost afraid to touch it. "It's very you," Michael said, graceful, strong in a quiet way. She looked at him. "Then I will wear it forever." The jeweler smiled as Michael paid. When the ring slid over Sarah's finger, she had to blink back tears. It was not just a ring, it was a promise that she was not alone. They chose a date that was not far away. Sarah did not want a grand show. She wanted something small and true. The garden would be the church, the house staff would be the crowd. A few of Michael's close friends would come, and the private investigator, Mr. Johnson, would stand near the back and clap with the gardeners and the cook. No one invited gossiping neighbors. Those who had whispered would have to watch from a distance or not at all. On the morning of the wedding, the sky was clear and soft. The cook served warm bread and fresh fruit. The housekeeper, Mrs. Lane, brushed Sarah's hair and fastened a simple white ribbon behind her head. She wore a pale dress that covered her growing belly. It was not tight, it was not fancy, it was exactly right. When she looked in the mirror, she saw no past shame. She saw a woman ready to walk forward. Ethan wore a little suit with a small blue tie. He kept jumping in place because he couldn't hold still. "Do I look like a gentleman?" he asked Sarah, eyes wide. "You look like the best gentleman in the whole world," she said, kneeling to straighten his collar. "And you look like an angel," he told her, very serious. She hugged him, careful not to crush his tie. The music played by a single violinist began. It was simple and sweet. The garden seemed to hold its breath. Michael stood under an arch twined with white flowers. He wore a dark suit and a quiet smile that Sarah had grown to love. Ethan walked first, carrying a small booklet that held the vows. He did not drop it, though his hands shook with pride. Sarah followed on the path of white petals. She did not look at the faces, she only looked at Michael. When she reached him, he took her hands. The world shrank to the space between them. The words were short and plain on purpose. There were no long speeches. The vows promised simple things: truth, kindness, courage, a home that would always be open. Michael spoke first. His voice did not shake. "I promise to be a safe place for you, for your child and for mine. I promise to see you and to listen. I promise to make a family with you that puts love first." Sarah spoke next. "I promise to stand with you on good days and hard days. I promise to keep our home gentle and strong. I promise to love Ethan as my own and to raise our baby with a steady heart." When the time came to kiss, it was not loud or showy. It was soft and certain. Somewhere behind them, Mrs. Lane dabbed her eyes with a napkin. The cook cheered. Mr. Johnson clapped with a small smile on his face. Ethan shouted, "Yay!" and threw a handful of petals straight up, so they rained down on everyone, including himself.
Afterward, they ate a simple meal under the trees. There were sandwiches and fruit, small cakes with white icing, and lemonade with a slice of lemon floating on top. Michael and Sarah took turns sitting, because Sarah got tired quickly. Now, every time she reached for her belly, Michael's eyes looked there too, as if he could not help himself. "Do you feel okay?" he kept asking in a soft voice. "I feel happy," she kept answering, "and a little hungry." "Good," he said, handing her another small cake. Before sunset, they took pictures. No one told them to pose like models. They stood how they usually stood, with Michael's arm around Sarah and Ethan tucked in front. In one picture, Ethan held Sarah's belly as if he was already hugging his new sibling. In another, Michael kissed the top of Sarah's head while she closed her eyes. When guests left, the garden grew quiet again. Fireflies blinked like small stars. Michael and Sarah walked the path slowly, fingers laced. "We're married," she said softly, almost to herself. "We are," he said, "and we will be every day." They stopped under the arch of flowers, the same place where they had said their vows. The moon rose full and calm. Michael kissed her there under the moon, and the kiss felt like a promise written on the sky. The weeks that followed were gentle. Michael had lawyers set the last pieces in place with the police and with the court. There were no surprises.
There were also no more whispers that mattered. People always talked, that was their habit. Michael focused on home. Sarah had regular checkups at the clinic. The doctor showed them the growing baby on a screen. The shape was small but clear. A small hand moved like a wave. Ethan pointed, mouth open, and then he laughed in wonder. "Is the baby waving at me?" he asked, bouncing. "Maybe," Sarah said, smiling. She knows her big brother's voice. "Is it a she?" he asked, bouncing. "We will know soon," Michael said, squeezing Sarah's hand. A week later, they knew. The doctor smiled and pointed again. "It is a girl," she said. Ethan jumped so high he nearly fell off the stool. "I'm going to have a sister." In the car on the way home, he planned everything. He would read to her, he would give her his blue dinosaur when she cried, he would teach her to say his name first. "Ethan," he repeated, tapping his chest. "That is easy." At home, the guest house's spare room became a nursery. The walls were painted a soft cream. A small wooden crib stood by the window. Sarah chose a quilt with little stars. Michael sat on the floor one Saturday, putting together a rocking chair from a box. After he built it, he rocked for a minute with a proud smile, as if he had built a castle. "What should we name her?" he asked one evening as they folded small clothes at the dining table. Sarah held a small hat between her fingers. She looked down at it, then up at him. "I was thinking Joy," she said quietly, "because that is what she gave me while she grew inside me." Michael repeated the name, tasting it. "Joy," he nodded. "It's perfect." Ethan tried the name too. "Baby Joy," he said, as if it were a title. "Princess of Giggles." They all laughed. The closer Sarah got to her due date, the more careful everyone became. Michael checked the car daily, making sure the tank was full. Mrs. Lane made a small bag with snacks and a blanket. The cook kept extra soup ready in the freezer. Ethan became an expert at picking up anything Sarah dropped, and he refused to let her carry even a pillow. "I am strong," he told her seriously. "You are extra strong, but today I'm the helper." "You are," she agreed, letting him feel proud. There was a small scare one evening when Sarah felt sharp pains. Michael rushed her to the hospital, hands tied on the wheel, but the doctor smiled kindly after the exam. "Not yet," she said. "Soon. Go home and rest." Michael laughed with relief, and then apologized for laughing. Sarah squeezed his hand. "We are learning," she said. "It's okay." On the night it really happened, the sky was dark and full of rain. It had been warm all day, and then the weather turned without warning. Thunder rolled low and long. The rain began as a whisper, and then became a sheet of sound. Sarah awoke with a tight pain across her belly that took her breath. She sat up slowly and timed the next wave. It came sooner than she expected. She breathed how the nurse had shown her, in through the nose, out through the mouth. She reached for the lamp and turned it on.
Michael was already moving. "Is it time?" he asked, voice low but steady. "I think so," she said, trying to keep her own voice calm. She felt another squeeze, stronger this time. "Yes." He was ready in less than a minute, shoes on, keys in hand, hospital bag in the other. "I will get the car. Do you think you can walk?" "I can," she said. "I can." He helped her into a coat and guided her through the rain. The driveway glowed under the lights. The car door opened, and she slid in, holding her belly with both hands. Her breath came fast. He drove carefully but quickly, his eyes looking at her face at every stoplight. "You are doing great," he said, over the sound of the rain. "I am right here." "I know," she said, and she did. At the hospital, nurses moved with calm speed, checking her, asking gentle questions. They led her into a clean room with a big window where the rain drummed like fingers. Michael stayed by her side. He counted breaths with her. He pressed cool cloths to her forehead. He did not leave, not even once. Time stretched. The world narrowed to the rise and fall of pain, the rhythm of breath, the soft voices of nurses,
Michael's steady hand around hers. She remembered the old nights under a bare roof, the fear, the cold. This was not that. This was pain that had purpose. This was pain that led to joy. When it was time to push, the nurse's voice grew firm and kind. Sarah dug deep into a place she had used to survive before, the place that said, "Keep going," when everything hurt. Michael's voice guided her like a line of light. The doctor said, "You were almost there. One more." Then the room filled with a new sound, a high, bright cry that lifted the roof of her heart. Sarah let out a sob that was also a laugh. The nurse placed a warm, wet, wiggling baby on her chest, and the world changed shape. "Hello, Joy," Sarah whispered, touching the small back, the small fingers that grabbed onto her. "Hello, my girl." Michael's face was wet, though the rain was outside. "She is beautiful," he said, voice rough. He kissed Sarah's hair. "You are amazing." The nurse cleaned the baby and wrapped her in a soft blanket with pink edges. Joy's eyes squinted, then opened, dark and curious. She made a small sound like a new bird. "Hi," Michael said, gently, brushing one finger over her cheek. "I'm your dad." They stayed like that for a long time, drinking in the newness. The storm slowed. Dawn, pale and gentle, began to push against the dark. Later that morning, Ethan walked into the room holding Mrs. Lane's hand. He had flowers he had picked from the garden in a little bundle tied with string. He wasn't sure if he should run or tiptoe, so he did an awkward quick walk that made everyone smile. "Sarah," he said in a hushed shout. "Daddy!" Then he saw the small bundle and stopped, eyes huge. "Is that her?" "This is her," Michael said, grinning. "Come meet your sister." Ethan came close to the bed and stood on his toes to see. He looked at the baby for a full 10 seconds without speaking. Then his face broke into a smile that Sarah would remember forever. "Now I have a sister," he whispered, almost in wonder. He touched the edge of the blanket and then looked at Sarah. "Thank you." Sarah laughed softly. "We all made her," she said, "together." Ethan nodded like a little man who had just been given a big job. "Hi, Joy," Ethan said to the baby. "I'm your brother. I will read you stories, and I will share my blue dinosaur when you're big enough." Joy made a small sigh and seemed to settle more comfortably in Sarah's arms. Ethan leaned his head against the bed like he wanted to hug them both at once. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel so you will be notified when I upload a new video. And do tell us where you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.